You're a patient girl. We're going to go hunting later on.
All rise. Yes, of course, I'm open and city for dispatcher's business. God save the state and Islamic court. The Admiral John Craig and Roxanne. Judge is presiding. Be seated. Come to order.
Judge Craig is often asked, "What got you into this?" Although it's not a short and easy answer, he quickly recalls that his aunt, a school teacher who lived in McDowell County, gave him a mounted hawk when he was a child.
From about age 10 until I went off to college, that hawk was looking at me every day. First thing I saw when I woke up in the morning, the last thing I saw when I went to bed. And so I've always been fascinated with hawks and raptors in general.
As time went on, he forgot about his interest in falconry. Then one day, as he was sitting in a waiting room, a magazine article sparked his interest once again.
I'm 50 years old. If I'm going to try and do this new sport, I need to hustle up and do it. I just did an internet search of falconry in North Carolina and learned that there was an organization called the North Carolina Falconers Guild. And I contacted the then president, Larry Dickerson, asked him if I could accompany him sometime when he took his hawk hunting, and he very graciously said yes.
But the steps to acquiring a hawk aren't as easy as running out to the local pet store. To be a falconer, you have to have a sponsor with a general falconer's license. You have to fill out some paperwork and then be an apprentice for 2 years. Then you have to pass a written federal exam administered by the State Wildlife Commission. After passing the exam, Judge Craig built his muse, the facility housing the hawk. That, too, had to be inspected and approved by his sponsor and the state wildlife biologist. After all of these steps were finally completed, he was able to send off for his paperwork to trap a wild red-tailed hawk.
September of '06, I was able to trap the first hawk I had, whom I named Fiona. I kept Fiona for 2 years and then let her go back into the wild. Since they are wild birds, they can be released back into the wild with really no ill effects. They generally do pretty well in the wild.
Once a hawk has been captured, it is obviously going to be very afraid. Its animal instincts leave it to believe that it is now prey and doomed to be killed and eaten.
You just have to keep talking with them and let them get used to your voice and mess with their feet and maybe with their legs and stroke their feathers a little bit and get them to where they are starting to understand that you're not going to hurt them. You begin the process of trying to get them to eat, and it's not all that easy to get them to eat. The next big step for the hawk is for you to put a piece of meat on the glove and for it to bend down and take it off the glove. Of course, she does it almost automatically now without even thinking about it.
But for a young hawk, it is a very scary thing to expose its neck to its captor.
Some people say to take them right out into the woods and start hunting. I do an intermediate step, and that is I just fly them around the neighborhood, go on walks with them, and the bird flies from tree to tree, and you teach the bird to stay up with you by blowing the whistle and calling it down to your fist for a tidbit, which reinforces the connection between you and the food and helps them know that even when they're out flying on their own, they can come back and get a snack.
Judge Craig tries to hunt with Roxanne a couple of times a week. They turn to friends with large farms to provide Roxanne the area and prey to hunt.
If they see a squirrel, they will usually try to ambush it once it's on the ground. But if the squirrel scurries up into the trees, the hawk oftentimes will abandon that chase and will just wait for another squirrel. As a falconer, you teach the hawk to continue the chase and take the chase on up into the tree branches. There's no set procedure for it. You really just have to sort of look and see how the hawk reacts and maybe encourage the hawk to try and get up in the tree with the squirrel. In classic falconry, say with a peregrine, the falconer puts his bird up and it climbs and climbs and climbs and builds to where it's about 1,000 feet. And then you walk along while it's circling and you try to scare up a duck or a pigeon or a dove or a grouse. This is more like just redneck dirt hawking, where you're doing a lot of work just like an old-time game beater trying to get the game beat up. It takes a lot more work than just to stand around and watch the falcon soar thousands of feet over your head and then go into a dive.
As far as falconers are concerned, the hawks also face the risk of disease. When they catch a hawk, they must take it to a vet who is experienced in raptors to check for parasites and worms. Raptors can also carry a viral infection called aspergillosis, which can lay dormant, but sometimes stress can induce it to attack the lungs.
And that happened to one of my hawks. I trapped a young hawk the first time this year, had him about 3 weeks, and all of a sudden, within a matter of about 36 hours, he came down with the symptoms of Asper, and no amount of antibiotics could save him at that point. That was a pretty traumatic experience for me. I really hated to lose that little hawk. It was a neat little male.
Juvenile hawks have a mortality rate of around 75%. Their only natural predator is great horned owls. But most of their life-threatening risks come from just day-to-day life, from being hit by cars, electrocution, and the up and down cycles of the food availability.
By trapping and flying these young hawks, I'm sort of saving them from a pretty grim statistic. When I eventually let them go, they also are much better prepared to catch squirrels, which is such a basic food item everywhere in this state. I feel pretty confident that a hawk's not going to go hungry because it can always hunt squirrels much more efficiently than it probably could have done in the wild.
Despite the challenges and the risks of his hobby, Judge Craig says it also brings him a lot of satisfaction.
People really enjoy seeing this bird, and they hear that I'm a falconer and that I've got a hawk, and they oftentimes ask me to bring her to work. It's always a treat for me to see the expressions of people on their faces when they come into close contact with a wild bird like that.
Some may view falconry as a blood sport. Judge Craig doesn't.
Falconry is not a blood sport as defined in the traditional sense. All this is I'm able to sort of open a window and enter its world. The hawk's going to be out there hunting squirrels and rabbits and rodents. It's got to eat. I'm just out there participating and helping the hawk what it ordinarily would be doing naturally. I don't view it as a blood sport at all. It does have an element, I guess you would say, violence, but it's a part of the natural order of things. It's just part of nature.
We will continue to follow Judge Craig and Roxanne's relationship. She will go through molting this summer when she will shed her feathers and grow a beautiful red tail. Craig is not sure how long he will keep her, but says it will be at least another year. So keep an eye on news-record.com.
Nappy nap time. There you go. Right on top of the news and record.